11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Coming to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern to talk about guns for about an hour. And we got a couple people joining us tonight. We got Psycho Camp joining us from Connecticut. Thanks for jumping in.
Hey there.
Hey. We got Woods jumping in from Washington, all the way on the other side of the country. Thanks for joining.
Hey, how are you? My mic working okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yep,
and I am in the middle somewhere. So thanks guys for jumping in. We got some people joining us on the Gun Channel side, of course, where we simulcast the show. We run it live on YouTube until Night Strike hits his shit together over on GunTube, and then we'll be moving over there. It is Tuesday, right? So we'll be talking about our Second Amendment, and let's see what we got. We're going to talk about state bans if they're constitutional. We'll talk about the state of Illinois, which we're in. And we're on episode 657. So we got a couple of links out there. Some of the people that are on the YouTube side being lazy have links on the Gun Channel side. Just haven't decided to join. But I see a couple of people out there. So thanks for joining us. It's part of our goal is to make interactive content. Not trying to impress anybody with anything other than creating a forum, so when we need them, we got the lines of communication available. So anyway, anything new going on? You guys?
I had a good time chatting just now with a new member of Gun Channels that actually is in Washington State here. So we went back and forth in the text chat, and it was good to get to know him and kind of tell him where some of the better gun stores are and give him some advice for this area, because he just bought a gun and he was actually. They were talking about him on another show earlier today, and it was really fun to like interact with. Being a newish gun channels member, welcoming another new Gun Channel member.
You're talking about Adelpho?
Yeah, that guy.
So not just that, but he said in Ghost Chat that he just purchased his first firearm. So not just new to our internet community, but new to gun community. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. And yeah, we're going to find that lots of people out here in the gun community are very cool people. There's some cliques and some, crowds and stuff, but for the most part, everybody is welcoming. So find out what you like to do and pursue it and share it. That's my advice. All right, so state bans, are they constitutional? Go.
No.
No.
Interesting. So we have a republic, a democratic republic. So we elect representatives to represent us in the federal government. But then we want that federal government being tyrannical and telling the states what to do.
Yep.
Telling all states they have to walk in lockstep.
Let me put it to you this way: a state going against the Second Amendment is no different than the state going against the First Amendment. If a state was trying to seriously infringe on the First Amendment, no one would have any problems with the feds taking a stand saying, hey, 14th Amendment says you're not allowed to do that. It's in the Constitution. The Constitution takes precedence over the state. No one would have a second thought about it. It's only because the Second Amendment is a deprecated amendment. People just don't like it that they get away with it. And that's my opinion on that.
That's valid.
Once again, Cycle Camp says it pretty awesome, so I don't really have much to add to that.
Well, I'm still.
This is why you'll never see me up for what do you call it, for Supreme Court.
I like the idea, though, of the states being experiments and doing their own thing and being able to react to their demographic or whatever the hell you call it, like their area of the country. We got different areas of the country. Is there very many things that are going to be universal?
No, I don't. I don't think there are a lot of things that are universal, but I think the ones that are specifically enumerated in the Constitution are. So I think things like the first, the fourth, the fifth, I think they're specifically enumerated in the Constitution, and the second, of course. And that kind of says, hey, no, you can't mess with these.
So Obnoxious is saying we're a constitutional republic, not a democratic republic. Is that true? And what's the difference in that nuance?
Right. That's exactly right. Because in a democratic society, majority wins. Whatever the majority says, that's what happens. If the majority decides you shouldn't have a bike, they take your bike. In a constitutional republic, the Constitution is the law of the land, and the Constitution is there to protect people's individual rights. And the states are not allowed to step on those individual rights. That is the whole difference between a republic, a constitutional republic, and a true democracy. That is why we don't have a true democracy, because the founding.
No one's suggesting we have a true democracy. Nobody's an idiot here, but we have. I've always heard it. Well, not always, but I've often heard it said as a democratic republic, in that we vote democratically for our representatives, who then represent us in the republic, but that's different than a constitutional republic?
Absolutely.
Okay. Who else said it over here? Again, on the stupid YouTube side, because they're lazy and won't chat on the gun channel side. Oh, it's difficult. Oh, it doesn't work perfectly. So anyhow, what does it say here? And every state signed on to the Constitution for statehood. So what you're suggesting is that there's this Constitution, and for the most part, the Bill of Rights lays down some lines in the sand. This is where the government will not tread on, whatever inalienable rights we might have. They enumerate them there in the Second Amendment or in the Bill of Rights. You're saying that since they signed on to the Constitution, or excuse me, signed into statehood for the Republic, that they then said, like you worded it, that although you can come up with whatever laws you might want, these are sacred and shall not be infringed.
Right. The states get to say what they want to say about things that are not in the Constitution. But there are very few amendments to the Constitution that are as clearly written as the second, in spite of how the progressive left would like to obfuscate that. The truth of the matter is the Second Amendment is, let's face it, it's the shortest, most simply worded amendment in the entire Bill of Rights.
You're talking about the second again?
Yeah, the second, yeah.
Yeah, but doesn't it say that the state has the right to own firearms?
Never said that. Doesn't say that there at all. The first clause of the Constitution, of the Second Amendment, is not the actual is not the action part of the clause. It's the justification part of the clause, and everybody that understands English and how English was used in the period that the Constitution was written understands that. In order that all guys, shouldn't be fat, the right of people to, or not starve, the right of the people to own refrigerators shall not be infringed. Well, it doesn't mean that just starving people can own refrigerators. It's a justification saying, yeah, it's good to have refrigerators. People should have them, but it's not an actionable part of the actual amendment. And it just really pisses me off when people start screwing around with that stuff.
Yeah, it's an independent clause.
Maybe a year ago, I don't care what about all that, because number one, nobody went to English anymore, or nobody paid attention to that. It's kind of shit in English. But maybe a year, maybe a little bit more ago, somebody, or at least I discovered the pretty easy way to think of it, that there's nothing else in the Bill of Rights, or the Constitution for that matter, that declares a right of the state. every single other thing in the Constitution either protects or describes the right of the individual and prohibits the state from all these different things. Can you mute in between, because you're eating or doing something over there? It's super distracting.
Oh, sorry.
So I think that's a good argument, because then you can get into clauses, you can get into commas, and you can get into what well-regulated means, and you can fight about them with what militia meant here and now or whatever, if it's organic. But I really like it. I think it cuts right to the throat. How come the Second Amendment is the only thing written to give the state a right, when everything else in there is to give an individual protection from a tyrannical state? And I haven't had a chance to throw that one at an anti yet, but has anybody else? Or has anybody else heard that one before?
I've heard it. I've never had a chance to use it against a non-gunner or an anti-gunner, but I'm totally gonna.
Well, the argument is that the states have the right. I think it's the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment says that states have to adhere to the Constitution and can't infringe on the Constitution, but that anything that's not enumerated in the Constitution, the states get a chance to do on their own. So if it's not specifically in the Constitution, then it's up to the state to determine how they're going to do it. And like you said earlier, G-Webs, all the little states are like a whole bunch of little melting pots, and that's why everybody does it slightly differently, and we try to figure out what the best way to do it is. The problem is that people have taken the clear, non-vague language of the Second Amendment and said, oh, wait a minute, there's wiggle room there. There's how people carry is not in the Constitution, so it's okay for the states to tell people how they can carry. And states have a vested interest in safety, and there's nothing about safety in the Second Amendment, so it's okay for the states to make laws about guns, in the name of safety. And my response to that is, shall not be infringed. It's very clear, it's very simple, and they made a mistake. The Supreme Courts of the day made a mistake when they said that states have a right to tell people how they can carry firearms, even though inside in the actual amendment it says the rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And by that I mean what that means to me is you can't tell people how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, or why to do it, because anything that's like that is an infringement. So and you can play the game with that, but that's part of I believe it's the 14th Amendment that says if it's in the Constitution, the states have to abide by it. But it's not in.
Did he break up for everybody? You say if it's in the it's in the 13th. And then it cut there for a minute for me.
The 14th. I believe the 14th Amendment says the states have to uphold the Bill of Rights. It's like a reciprocity clause, right? That says, if the feds can't do it, the states can't do it either. And it's only the stuff that's not specifically granted as a power to the federal government that the states can make laws about. And that's where you get in trouble with just how airtight is the Second Amendment. So it's okay in the First Amendment, people have the right to free speech, but it's okay for a state to make them get a permit before they use public land to make their free speech. Gee whiz, am I good with that? I honestly don't think I am.
Hold on. Number one, you can say whatever you want, but if you want to go say it in the middle of the intersection, the state has a way to say, no, you can't just stand in the middle of the intersection just because you suggest it's free speech. Big deal. Everybody else has to get to work. So we share that area. Now, when you're talking right to assemble, yeah, everybody's got a right to assemble. But again, right to assemble right in the middle of everybody else's day-to-day lives, not necessarily. We have a government to, move things around or put things in the right spot. So, these free speech zones or whatever that people rail against. I mean, I'm not against free speech or anything, but I'm also not going to suggest that those people that stand in the road and block, traffic to get their point across are exercising the right to assemble or the right to free speech. They're terrorists and they're jumping in the middle of, the people's, effort. They're standing in the way of ambulances and stuff like that, right?
Well, I totally agree with you, but in that case, they are infringing on other people's rights, their right to travel unrestricted, and things like that. So I definitely don't have a problem with that. I think it's perfectly okay for the state to say you can't demonstrate in the middle of an interstate because you're blocking everybody else. You're interfering with people's right to travel and get where they got to go. So, but what infringements against the second, when they infringe against us on the second, they are only infringing against us. They are not doing it because we're infringing on other people. When we decide to carry a firearm, we're not infringing on anybody else. They can do what they want to do. We don't stop them from doing things.
That's interesting. I think there's some perception there, and there's certainly, I believe, that they have intentionally, strategically altered the move that, what's that window? Clover told me earlier, I forget it. The Overton window. They've intentionally moved the perception, the cultural perception of firearms to where they do equate any interest in firearms with skeptical. Like, what's up with this person that they have an interest in firearms? Are they, compensating for some sexual organ? Are they violent? Are they, paranoid? Like, it's all negative stuff, right?
Yeah, well, they must just plain be deplorable, just like anybody who would have voted for Trump. It's very easy for that stuff to come around like that, right?
I don't think it was an easy thing for them to change society to that thing, and I don't think it was a Republican Democrat thing. I think it was bigger, nefarious stuff than that. That's, social, whatever, conscious. That's people that want to see state control versus individual. They want to see collective versus single, I think. That's more than just Democrat, Republican. That's, political systems or whatever. But I think that that's where we come in, and that's where, as individuals who are willing to share, and the boring stuff and the fun stuff and the interesting stuff and whatever, all the different areas of it, I think that we're going to do stride. We're creating strides in the opposite direction. We're, number one, making it difficult for them to suggest that all gun owners are XYZ, and we're illustrating, through all different kinds of ways and all different kinds of platforms and all different kinds of scale, again, all of the various aspects of firearms. And, it's real difficult for someone to suggest cars. I have a lot of time to think while I'm driving and stuff. And, if someone were against cars, they could go against the pollution. They could go against the, not non-necessity, if that's the word, to have a single person in a car, for transportation. The roads take up so much space. If we just use buses or trains or something, we'd have all this more space in the congested areas of the cities and stuff. There's so many ways that you could attack cars, but we don't, because everyone who sees a car doesn't see a 6,000-pound metal weapon that a 16-year-old can drive legally and a 14-year-old can drive, with some sort of loophole. And, even younger kids can drive with farm loopholes. They don't see that because no one's intentionally getting rid of cars yet. There's no end game for the socialists or whatever to get rid of cars yet. But I'm sure socialist countries don't want people driving around cars willy-nilly. They'd much rather see public transportation only, right? So anyway, I think that, we've got something to gain here. We're all efforting, I think, successfully, and with a little effort and with a little deliberate focus, I think that we can be just as powerful, if not more so, many times more so, really, than the efforts against us. The efforts against us have all been done pre-internet. They were done when very, very, very few people, I don't know if you guys have seen the stuff that talks about who owns media, but it's very few people. I think it's like 12 people own literally every newspaper, television, movie, right? Like all media is just very few people, and for a long time that was the dynamic. And there's whole generations of people who grew up with that dynamic and that dynamic developing in front of them. And when there is no alternative, they're left with the without any critical thinking, they're left with the idea that that's the way it is. Well, fuck that. That's not the way it is, and we're seeing it change. And I think every single person who either takes a camera and shares pictures or audio or video, and additionally, every single person that watches that, values it, communicates with it, shares it, gives it validation by giving it credibility, is fighting that. And like I say, we've got the potential already. It's just a matter of harnessing that and giving it some direction, and then doom on those sons of bitches. There's no way that they can make a movie that's going to dissuade all the people that we have reached, not just the people that watch our shit, but the people that are in our lives that know us and know what we do. And when they sit down in Thanksgiving or at Christmas or at some movie and you're just bullshitting before the movie starts and you say, what do you do for a living? Or what do you do for a hobby now? Oh, I don't play golf anymore. Now I do something like, blah, blah, blah. I do something with firearms related. There's no way that they can combat that.
Yeah, that's all part of the normalization of which is where we were, 70, 80 years ago. Guns were just everywhere, and people walking around with them all the time, and they were in the backs of cars, and kids. I mean, people put the gun rack in the back of the pickup, took the gun to school because they were going hunting after school. I mean, it's just, they were just normal. People had them all the time.
I'm also having more faith in the younger people because they're not so dependent on any kind of the old medias that the 12 people own, that they like some of the other medias, like such as this one or any of the ones that, aren't your typical owned by the, 12 super rich people who are also getting very, very old and are going to probably lose their grip.
Yeah, but they have their young evil Sith apprentices who run the Twitters and the YouTubes and the Googles of the world, who have decided that their version of reality is the only reality that people ought to be allowed to find on the internet. So I am personally a little concerned about that, because you can stop buying a newspaper and there's nothing a person can do to make you buy that newspaper. But if you go to the internet for your information, you're screwed if these big mainline companies decide they don't want you to know stuff and they don't want you to see stuff. You're screwed. There's nothing you can do about it.
You had been screwed, but again, the old people that went from newspapers to radio, I guess, to television, and then finally, were kicking and screaming, brought to the internet. They landed on AOL, and they thought that was the internet. And then when AOL went under, they went, uh-oh, there's websites and there's things. It's so scary. Oh, there's Facebook. And they all went to Facebook. So the same way that you're aware that a couple of the large anti-gun influences are getting older, there's a massive population of people that's going to drop off Facebook. Now, there's a bunch of idiots that are just going to go to Facebook because it's easy and they're lazy. That's fine. But the people that you're talking about, the kids, talking about the kids coming up, the kids that I've seen, the kids that I know, kids in my family, kids of my friends, all ages are so fluent in mobile phones and tablets and whatever's next that there's no way you're gonna suggest that those people are gonna be forced to Facebook. In fact, the dissatisfaction that we as adults are seeing in Facebook, I can't even imagine that they're satisfied with that. So there's going to be new platforms. The fact that Instagram is so much more growing so much faster than stupid Facebook, piece of shit, like messy, non-archival crap. I think that we're going to see waves and trends, or whatever you call it, fads, different interests and tastes. And, this is all right now because phones happen to be the way they are. Add another level of tech to phones, and the platforms will have to change. They've changed when we went from pictures to sound. They changed when we went from sound to video. And why would we think we're done at this point? There's something new coming, and there's something that's being created after that, and the platforms will change with it, and our means of communications will change. And luckily, what they pull, what follows from one platform or one trend to another or one fad to another is what's archived. And let's just say again, I'm gonna pat everybody on the back. Everybody who's creating content out there is creating a platform for the next generation to stand up from, and that's not ignorance, and that's not gaps in history, and that's not unawareness of all the different aspects of shooting. Now they get to see all that and move forward.
And I also think it's important that as times change and as new platforms evolve, that we evolve with them. Wherever people start to go, wherever the new avenues are, us people as gun people need to be involved in that too.
As much as possible. Luckily, hopefully, there's enough of. Well, I think there's enough of us that people's tastes will go along. With like I like pictures or I like video, and they'll go to that platform. And then we'll have people out there who are interested in those platforms creating content that the audience that's interested in that would appreciate, as opposed to some of the stuff that's forced right now.
I mean, no matter how they try to hide us, man, we're just everywhere. And that's kind of the point, is we have to be everywhere.
Yeah, I think to Cycle's point too, that the stranglehold or the filter that the creators of these platforms, the two big ones, YouTube and Facebook, that we're talking about. I don't think Twitter gives a shit. It's not. It's insignificant. Twitter's just a way for famous people to talk to their fans. Until we get enough famous gun people, that's not going to be a big thing. But anyway, anytime those companies become tyrannical, we're a free country. I don't care what anybody says or what you want to say about the younger generations. Whoever had that speech about Americans or people of the United States, I should say, our number one question is why. So as soon as Facebook starts telling us this or that and people start getting wind of it, we're going to get left behind like yesterday's news. Go ahead and mute. We're going to jump in. Jump in, say whatever you want, but mute in between. But you know what I'm saying? I think that people are aware and they're really tuned in to when they're being stifled. And I don't think anybody wants to be stifled. So as we notice it on Facebook, other things are going to notice it. Other culture, parts of the communities are going to notice it, and people are going to flee from Facebook as soon as there's 2 or 3 things that are better. We've already seen it with Instagram. I don't want to dominate it though. So anything else with our state bans constitutional? I think that's what we got. We started all this from. Some of the other people have been jumping in. Gary jumped in. He's already chimed in, but then Cody jumped in.
Well, John Smith on the YouTube side actually put up the first the lead part of the 14th Amendment, and that is that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. That's the main part of the phrase. And then it says that they shall also not deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And that's the very first section of the 14th. So if you have in the Constitution a Second Amendment that says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, then as far as I'm concerned, there are no legal gun laws. Zero. And for a state to pass laws in lieu, so all the federal gun laws are bullshit, and any state laws, I believe, are also bullshit.
I like to agree with that. I'd like to hear a lawyer's or whatever, a constitutional scholar's, perspective on that, because it all right now, all the stupid gun crap, 34, 68, all use the interstate commerce, which is, I think, not a strong platform in the first place. I'd like to see us move towards getting rid of the NFA and all that. I think it'd be great to hear some people who are knowledgeable about the constitutional side of it. Because, it seems like you just said, if you got a second and you got a 14th, where do these other things come from?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we see happening, especially in my state in Pennsylvania here, they will start using other things like registered receipts for handguns. And I agree with all of you that there is no such thing as a constitutional gun law, but they will do everything they can to either tax us or try to keep us from having it. In fact, right now we have two bills that are going to be causing us to have no due process for allegations of abuse, and it's crazy. It's something that'll just all of a sudden, with no respect or to the legal process, you will automatically lose your gun rights, and you could be committed as a felon in the state of PA.
Yeah, I think that's some of the scariest stuff coming around lately, and we didn't hardly even address it at the gun rights policy conference, but that seems like a horrible door to open.
Yeah, it's just one more way of backdoor registration for us to keep us from being able just to do what we want and be free.
Well, the worst of it is the whole set of laws where all a person has to do is accuse you of something and they take your guns away. And that happened in Connecticut last year or the year before. And we already had a law in the books that if a person was demonstrably screwed up, the police could do an investigation, submit that information to a judge, and then they could go confiscate that guy's firearms. So we already had a law that said if this guy it's demonstrably wacko and there is actual evidence that there's something wrong here, then we can go in and take that guy's guns. But no, that wasn't good enough. They had to put together the law that said if anybody around you, anybody in your family or your neighbors or close associates of yours get concerned about you, they can file a restraining order, and they have that checkbox on the restraining order that says the guy has guns, go take them away. And that right there, that is removal of a person's property without due process. And that is supposed to be absolutely guaranteed to us, that you're not supposed to have your property removed and impounded and all that kind of stuff without due process. Yet people constantly come back and say, take the guns first, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah,
Absolutely ridiculous.
Trump said that. The scariest part is Trump said that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, even scarier. Yeah.
Yeah, he interrupted Pence to make sure that he said that.
Yeah. I think that bit him in the butt, though.
Yeah, luckily I don't know, does he even have the power? I mean, I guess he has the power to suggest they enforce that, but then the courts and everybody else can jump in and stop him.
Well, he is the head of the executive branch, yeah.
Well, he has the power to make them do it, but he doesn't have ultimate power, and he can be clipped from both other branches. So we can motivate our representatives in the House to do that. But I don't know what happens on the Senate. I guess a bunch of our organizations that we support would have to then, if he really followed through with that craziness, they'd have to follow, push some case up to rule on it.
Well, the real problem with Constitution, this supposedly being a constitutional republic, is that SCOTUS isn't doing their job. They're the ones that are supposed to be standing up and saying, no more, you can't do this stuff. And they're the ones that keep saying, nope, don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. They're like the parents. The kids are tearing the house apart, and the parents got their ears in their fingers going, la, 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 la. They're supposed to be watching out for us. They're supposed to be making sure that our constitutional rights are not being stepped on. And SCOTUS, time and time and time again, refuses to hear the cases.
Well, I hear you. I don't like to throw blame on somebody when it's us. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, right? There's other sayings. We don't get to lay down and watch our government work perfectly. We have a tendency, and I don't know if it's just human nature, because it kind of seems like it, to focus on the president as if there's some king of the country. We pretty much know that our representatives are, voted in by us to act on our behalf and on the Congress, and we obviously pay all kinds of attention to the president, and we monitor what's going on with all the different branches in the executive side. But how much do we really do on the Supreme Court side, other than watching the little phony shows when the justices are, what do they call that? Run through the paces. We don't put as a country a lot of, or at least equal effort, 1/3 of our attention on those court cases that are moving up. So I don't know what it would be like if we had a country that was more politically active, to where 1/3 of our attention was on the various cases that are, positioning themselves on the way up to the Supreme Court. But potentially, I would think if we were focusing 1/3 of our attention, which would be a lot more than we're doing now, on those, I don't know, would we see more? If we were more active on doing whatever needs to, I don't even know what the process is, honestly, with getting justices out of there, or holding them to task, or paying more attention to them. It's odd. We've got so many Congress people, and we pay attention to them like they're celebrities, and we got like 9 justices. Most of us can't even name who they are.
Well, justices are voted in for life, so there's not much you can do about that. I don't know how you go about impeaching a justice, but my concern is I have too many friends of mine personally who have put their sacred honor and their treasure into fighting the fight and taking it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I'm specifically speaking about Ed Peruta. And he gets up there and he doesn't get his day. He doesn't get his day in court. And it's just so obvious that was a wrong decision, that the court made the wrong decision in not hearing his case. And of course, what's his name there, Thomas and those guys, they went ballistic in their when they wrote their dissenting opinion. Right. But the whole point is, people are doing what they're supposed to do. I mean, CCDL, we spent almost $1 million taking our case about Connecticut up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear it. And so I don't think it's that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. I think I don't think it's them not doing what they're supposed to do. We're beating the streets. We're getting the money. We're making the cases. We're following the process. We're being good little citizens, and we're following the process from the state courts to the circuit courts up to the Supreme Court. And when we get up to our first to the Supreme Court, we have our little bowl in our hand saying, "Oh, please, sir, would you please hear my case?" And they say, "Be gone, little kid. We don't want to hear your case today."
Right.
And boy, that is incredibly depressing.
I'm not suggesting the effort of people to get cases through. I mean, that's an incredible amount of effort, cost, and effort and time. But I guess what I'm saying is, we don't. If you took a poll of people and said, "Are you a gun owner? Are you a proud gun owner? You're an active 2A activist," and you got yourself a pretty good pool of those people who consider themselves that, and then you asked them to name off the Supreme Court justices, it's just not in our active conversations. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, if we were to, again, divide up our attention that we spend on politics and actually divide it into thirds, and then follow through. And again, I understand that you don't just remove Supreme Court justices every time they don't vote the way you want, but you can give them a legacy of, they were a shit justice, and I don't think too many of them are interested in that. You can harp on things like the case you just mentioned, what is it, Peruta? I agree with you. That was a very frustrating one, because it was necessary with Heller to find, I guess, modern interpretation of the Second Amendment. But we let it, you put all this tremendous effort into getting that case up there, exactly like you said. They said no. We let it go. I mean, we're talking about it right now. But what if it was remember Peruta, and when next time it comes for the House to be remember Peruta is all over the place, and now they have to deal with that. And that's where I think you get into, focus, or I guess putting the what am I trying to say, the different divisions of government against each other. We win when they're in gridlock and they're fighting with each other and they're watching each other's back. Right now, it's not that they're in cahoots or collusion. It's just that nobody pays attention to the Supreme Court, so they're able to say no with no consequence. I'm suggesting, in addition to everything we do now, how do we give them some consequence, maybe, so that they have to think, oh, there's going to be a consequence to whatever I say one way or the other, besides, precedent and law, which is pretty big. I don't know. We've been digging in. So unless anybody else has anything that you've been wanting to say and we've been chatting over you, I'm going to dig into Illinois. Going once, twice. All right, into Illinois. So, Illinois is the host of the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and a lot of people consider Illinois behind state lines for no reason. Illinois has constitutional carry. It took them a little while to get it, thanks to the Second Amendment Foundation and a bunch of people who put in the work. We have constitution now. We have concealed carry in Illinois. Then they tried to pull in some crazy gun laws at the state level, and you had a consequence of to that of a bunch of the counties saying no and standing up to Springfield, which is somewhere in here, and Chicago, which is that big red spot, and said no. And they created sanctuary cities for guns. So using the sanctuary city like term, they played on that and said gun sanctuary counties. So now what we've got is I count 40 counties in green, which have already passed initiatives or whatever, or passed bills, which say that county is no longer going to, they're going to ignore bad gun laws passed down by the state. And they're not going to enforce them. They're not going to task their sheriffs with enforcing any of those bad gun laws. The counties in yellow have it on the ballot already and are going to be voting soon. So that's quite a few more. And then in orange is counties that have actually efforted. The counties in red haven't done anything yet. There's no action. We'll probably won't see action in Chicago, I suspect. I don't know what's going on in the tip of Illinois. It's basically nothing down here. It's like forest. I don't know what's going on. But I don't know. There must be some explanation. Maybe there's just not enough people there to even care. But I think that's a cool thing that, again, Illinois, right in the middle of everything here. They're good gun states all around it for the most part. It's just Chicago. And this is a way for a whole bunch of people in this big giant state down here to say no to something that Chicago had influence over Springfield. Anybody following this stuff?
Yeah, well, it's like how LA and San Francisco control all of California. It's
or
the
Seattle
same deal.
controls Washington.
Kind of. I don't think it's exactly the same.
And I mean, Illinois may have constitutional carry for its people, but it doesn't have constitutional carry from anybody from out of state, like Vermont does.
CCW. I keep saying constitutional carry. Sorry. They don't have the best CCW, but at least they are they were the last state to hold out and not even offer it. So now it's a thing, and we have to be satisfied with steps. Very rarely do we go from black to white. You have to have increments in between. So this was the first increment. Like most states that started back with CCW, that didn't just go to constitutional or something. You go from long, like Illinois, 10 hours, I think, 16 hours. It's insane. It's a 2-day CCW class, $350. Usually you go a few years. They figure out there's not blood in the streets. They're able to shorten it to 8 hours. At some point, they shorten it to no testing, and then eventually they get to constitutional, ideally. But I think it would be a lot more grim, 90, if we didn't see all these green counties.
Yeah, it really would be. And it's also like the cake analogy that I've heard you use before, and even heard Night Strike use earlier, that we got to keep doing the same thing, taking little by little until they have nothing less to hold from us, but we have our entire cake back.
Dude, I am happy to hear that because I needed some more money. So if Night Strike is stealing off of me, that's good. I'll have another lawsuit. Thanks. I stole that from somebody else too.
This should also help if you're a senator or something from Illinois. You should probably start looking at this map and saying, wait a minute, if I've been voting anti-gun, there's a whole lot of people that are pro-gun. Maybe I should change my mind here because, senators like to stay in power.
True.
Well, I'll tell you what, I bet all you guys can name the 2 senators from my state. In Connecticut,
Dodd, one of them.
no, the U.S. senators.
I have no idea.
I'll
Yeah,
give you a
that's
hint.
Kevin.
One of them sounds suspiciously like Bloomberg.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Blumenthal and Murphy. I bet every one of you knows about Blumenthal and Murphy.
I don't know if you'd win that bet. So tell us about Blumenthal and Murphy, even though we're talking about them.
Oh man, just with the Kavanaugh hearings, those guys are going berserk.
Oh, okay. If it's that, I haven't been watching those. Okay.
Well, but they're like the worst senators ever as far as gun rights and stuff are concerned. It's embarrassing to be from the same state that they're from.
Well, we're talking Illinois, so I'm going to jump back to my Instagram here. I've been going to a couple of different shops in Illinois. So first off, we were talking on Clover's or on Ghost Chat earlier, and somebody mentioned not liking to go into restaurants and stuff that have the no gun signs. And I mentioned that I just picked up these, which are pretty cool cards that a lot of the state gun owners' rights organizations will offer. Or if you don't find them at your state's organization, you can find them online. You can print them, or better yet, take show this to a printer. They'll duplicate it, and have 500 of them made. That costs you like $7 or something on a special, and then pass them out. Hand them out at places and leave piles of them at gun shops and gun shows. And they basically tell the proprietor that hey, you might not have thought about this, but gun owners, especially concealed carriers, have gone through quite a bit of scrutiny, and we have money. Guns that cost $500 that we carry around. We probably have more than one, so you probably want us as customers. But anyway, so headed over to Fox Valley Range. Graham had been talking about that one. They haven't even had their grand opening yet. It's going to be this Saturday. So they've got a couple of raffles going, and it's got 6, 10, 12 ranges or something like that, or 12 lanes. This is the inside of the shop. The ranges are divided up into a couple of private ones, the 4 there, and then a couple of 6 more. It's Illinois, so I think what the deal is you can't touch a gun unless you've got a firearms card. So like a lot of the stores, their inventory is behind glass. So basically that requires a customer, what do you call it, a employee or whatever, to open up something to show it to you. But they basically got the different collections in these standing cabinets, which makes it easy to browse. I mean, it's better than, a lot of stores will have all this stuff below your waist. You got to bend over to see anything. I really like when stores lift the inventory up like this. It's still, there might somebody super short might be over their head, but for most people, this is probably about their chin or whatever. So you can still see around the store, find your kid if he's running around, but you can also take a look at the actual inventory. And if an employee comes over and opens it up or whatever, you can see all of them right there. It's pretty handy. As an out-of-state resident, I don't need FOID. I can look at guns, I guess. They had quite a selection there. So that was one of the shops, very new. I really think this is the future of gun shops. I wrote it in here, not gun shops, but ranges. I've been to a couple of the really high-end ranges, and I would love to say that that's the future of ranges, but those things cost like thousands of dollars a month or a year to be a member of. This one is more midline. It's not a dirt hole in the middle of nowhere. They put it right in the middle of a nice area. They probably put millions of dollars into their facility as far as the filtration and all that. Can you imagine what EPA does now to requires what a new range would have to install? But the facility itself is just nice and clean and big. They've already incorporated things like training, classrooms, enough room to have events there, barbecues and stuff like that. And I think that's really the future of ranges. Instead of just being a place for hardcore hobbyists to go and do their thing and leave, like an efficient facility, I think that they're kind of already creating it to be, I don't know, like I say, for events and for birthday parties and for, different things that, in the past nobody had really thought of. And again, it's a really nice place, real nice people too. So, sometimes you go into a shop and they're a little standoffish. These guys were the opposite. There's a bunch of stuff from the Gun Rights Policy Conference, and then we'll get down to some more gun shops in here. This one I really, really liked. It's what's it called? Marengo. I guess that's a town in Illinois, and their display impressed me a lot. Like I just said, most of the shops in Illinois have their inventory behind glass. This place has this whole section of the store. And you kind of, you'd see it's kind of a U shape. So I guess if someone didn't have an FOID, they could probably say, hey, get out of there. But each of the guns is tethered to the wall. And again, from about your, not even your knees, even above your head, depending how tall you are. And you get an opportunity to really see the differences between the models and stuff, but get your hands on them right away. I don't think I've seen this display ever before, except for like at a trade show or something. I just really thought that was cool. Not only that, they've got a pretty big shop, super friendly people, and an interesting shop. They had all kinds of neat stuff. It wasn't just brand new guns. Here's another bunch of pictures from that same shop. So you can see their long guns are also similarly up in the air, so you can take a look at them as you're walking by. You can get your eyes on the whole damn gun. It's not behind a counter. It's not on the floor like that. Their signage is decent. They have these cool giant airplanes. I don't think they're remote control, but they look really rugged, so I don't know what they are. They're really big. I didn't want to take too close of pictures, so I try not to get like their security systems and stuff in my pictures. They had this kind of stuff for no reason, just around the shop, which blows me away. I really like seeing cool stuff just in a gun shop. If you're not shopping, it gives you something to look at, or if you're waiting in line, your eyes can wander and be interested in stuff. You can see there's just a ton of stuff in the shop. These two bins here, you can barely see, look like pool tables. Are almost the size. They're like the size of one of those foosball tables or whatever it's called, but they're just full of dollar stuff. Everything in here is like less than $5. So again, up in the air, so you don't have to bend over to see in there. Really cool shop. I'm hoping that when I take pictures of these shops, that some of the other shops out there that might be interested see some of these ideas and take some of them. This was from Iowa, so that doesn't matter. Is that the only Illinois shops I got in here? I guess that's it, unless we count this. This was Illinois, and this is a gun shop. So this is the location where Jonathan Browning, the dad of John Browning, so he was a Mormon, and he became a Mormon. So Jonathan Browning was just some dude living in some city south of here. Somebody gave him a Mormon Bible or whatever the story is, and he decided to be a Mormon, and then he became like a hardcore Mormon, moved up to Nauvoo or whatever it's called, and set up shop. And as a gunsmith, or as a blacksmith, he had built a few guns, and he invented the harmonica gun. So the gun with instead of a round cylinder with chambers in it, it's a flat bar with chambers drilled into it. So it's basically almost like a magazine for black powder. It was a pretty neat little gun. He invented it. He never patented it, so he just gets credit for it. But he never really had time to develop too many firearms because the Mormons got run out of here, and he was told by the Mormons to help, as a blacksmith, help the other Mormons get across to Utah or wherever they went. I think they went to Iowa first and then Utah. So I don't know. There's no way. They don't really talk about it. I don't know if anybody knows. But even if he wanted to develop guns, he really didn't have an opportunity. Then, of course, he went to Utah eventually and made John Browning, which was his best gun invention because then John Browning. Anyway, super cool going to this place. That's a harmonica gun. And this one was made by Jonathan Browning. So you can see he was already highly skilled back in the days before John Browning was even born. And that's him. And it's just neat because a bunch of people ran the Mormons out of Illinois, burned this whole area down and smashed it and then took it over. This house stayed, but this was all gone. And this was his workshop. So there's some pictures in here somewhere. I don't know if I have them in the Instagram that show this is his old place. There's some pictures that I think I took pictures of that showed what it looked like when I think the Mormon church came and bought all this area back again after a while. And there was still the foundations of the workshop and everything. So even though this is a recreation, it's a recreation done on the actual footings and then to the pictures that they have at the time. So just a neat experience to be able to stand on the place where John Browning's dad was. I guess that's technically in Illinois. And then the rest of these aren't Illinois. So I'll be posting, saw a couple of more shops when I was there. Actually, there's some neat ones that I'll be posting. So that's Illinois. I don't know what else. Does anybody have any experience with Illinois? guns or anything?
It was really depressing to drive through Illinois and have such fabulous gun stores and not be able to buy a damn thing.
Yeah.
But I love the gun stores. They got some great goddamn gun stores in Illinois. And
Even with
all
their
the other
CR.
states, it's really funny because the states right next to them, when you get real close to the Illinois border, the number of gun stores per square mile just jumps amazingly high. So
Yeah.
you know you're coming close to Illinois because all of a sudden there's gun stores everywhere. It's crazy.
Now you're saying even with your CNR, you couldn't buy guns in Illinois?
No.
Oh, that's lame.
No, it was bad. Well, I don't think I had it when I went through Illinois. I was going to visit my relatives in Arkansas. I didn't go through Illinois when I went to Tulsa, and I didn't have my CNR then. Because when I had the CNR, I went through New York to pick up John Z, and we kind of went that way. You know, we went the lower loop instead of the upper loop, and so I didn't get a chance to go. So yeah, I didn't have my CNR, so I couldn't buy anything.
I mean, I suppose it has something to do with the. Well, it all has the fact that Illinois got their CCW probably has to do with the fact that there's a lot of gun owners here, and now that they have their CCW potential, they're all shooting a lot more. But whatever the chicken or the egg came first there. Sorry, Gary. Whatever the reason, they're definitely stepping it up with their ranges too. From Rick Big Gunner 81. When he was still in Illinois doing his shows with that radio show. I can't remember the name of the radio show anymore, but he was working with that radio show out of Range 355. That's sort of a big, giant building dedicated new gun shop. This Fox Valley one is a new one. I didn't get a chance to go to this other one because it's an invite only. There's only like so many members, and I know a couple of members, but they work during the day, so they couldn't take me down there. It's not necessarily close to Chicago. But there's another sports club that's just growing immense in size, doing events, at the national level, hosting events at the national level and stuff. So, I mean, there was a time when people thought Illinois was just going to always be just this void in the middle of the country as far as the Second Amendment and guns. And I'm glad to say, I'm glad they put the Second Amendment or the Gun Rights Policy Conference here because, I mean, I might have come through Illinois because I have some people here, but, coming here for that and hanging out, getting the experience from Chicago Guns Matter, from Illinois State Rifle Pistol Association. It's been around since 1903, I think, or 1905 or something. Pretty cool. They're definitely fighting, and they're basically fighting a big, giant, engine from Chicago that honestly doesn't have a lot of fact or, clout to their position, right? We all know that there's kinks in their position, and well, we won't get into it too much tonight because we've got to end at some point, but lots and lots of cool stuff at the Gun Rights Policy Conference on how to deal with that situation with the the Chicago and the violence and all that. All right, so everybody else wants to throw anything in there they can on Illinois. Otherwise, we have a gun movie about Cody. You knew what's the last movie you saw, or what's a cool gun movie you like?
Cool gun movie I like.
You got a minute to think about it. Is there any history today? I don't have the links in front of me, so I'm just going to go jump over to guncalendars.com where I try to post stuff like that. If you got anything, I'm sure we've been missing a bunch of shows. I'm sure I can cover a couple of things here. Does anybody notice anything that I don't have in here as far as gun history? I don't have anything for the 26th. Looks like 24th, we had Gold Star Mother and Families Day. So those are families, mothers, and the rest of the families of the fallen. We take a day to acknowledge their loss and their contributions to freedom and all that. Looks like that same day, Hugo Schmeiser, guy who made the MP44, he was born back in Holy crap! 1884. That guy built a M44 or the STG 44. Anyway, nothing else on the calendar here. So, did that give you enough time? What's a gun movie we're going to talk about?
I would definitely have to say it's probably going to be Atomic Blonde. Yeah, Atomic Blonde. It's a more recent release of a movie, kind of a comic book movie, but they use extensively West and East German handguns during the Cold War and Soviet era, along with some Makarovs. So it really gives it a Cold War noir feeling, and you have those awesome P-22, I want to say fives, being shot all over the place.
Okay. Anybody else seen this movie, Psycho Camp?
I've seen it. It's
No,
pretty good.
no, I have not seen it. Sorry.
Gary?
Nope, never seen it. Hadn't even heard of it until now.
And Gary or Woods, you said you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I couldn't agree with that noir kind of aspect of it. It made it feel kind of that dark kind of thing. It was all right. I mean,
2017. I totally missed it then. Was it a big budget thing, like in the movie theaters, or?
yeah, it was in the theaters. I don't think it did particularly well though, but it's a pretty decent movie.
Who's this girl? Is she in anything else? I don't recognize her. I don't think.
I'll be honest, I don't know. I think this is the first time I've ever seen her in anything.
Okay. So what? She's like a hitman or something?
She's a U.S. Triple agent for the British and the Russians in East Germany. So it's playing that three-way role of stealing info from the Russians to give to the Germans, to give to the British, back to the U.S., and ends up being an assassin for a couple other double agents that are double agents for Russia against the English.
All right. And then it's like a legit, like real story, or it's like a Taken type of made up thing?
It's a comic book movie. It's straight up just made up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't even know about it, so that's awesome. So that's the whole point of this is there lesbians in it? Looks like there's girls kissing it.
Yes, there are quite a few.
Oh, well, then here we go. So Atomic Blonde, right on. So that's the whole point, is to talk about movies we haven't seen before. So now you got one, if you haven't seen it. Anything else? You else want to throw anything in there tonight?
I will.
Oh, go ahead.
If you live in PA, get out and call your local representatives about the two new House bills that are going to threaten to pull your guns from you for just accusations. And otherwise support the other states, because if it's not for us supporting them, they become testing grounds and it comes to us.
I want to throw out there, I know Yankee did something about 1639 here in Washington. I do agree that he said, like, you know, this is one of the places Bloomberg's trying out some pretty crazy shit. So try to help us fight it, because if it works here, it might go somewhere else.
If it might, what the hell are you talking about? Every time something works in Washington, which is pretty much always, it always goes to Oregon because they do anything you tell them, and now it's gone to Nevada. So none of this if and might bullshit. When it happens in Washington, it happens in Oregon, and now it's leaching into fucking Nevada. So we better start fighting for Washington. I'm glad that Sporting Systems and Yankee are efforting this time. But holy crap, your state needs to get off its damn ass and get help if you need it, or educate your damn people. But yeah, I'm sick of people yelling about California and Illinois and New York and New Jersey, who we know are getting wailed on. Freaking Washington, you guys need to really get your people together over there.
Yeah, I threw some money at them today just to help out the cause, just for the better good.
So, 1789, September 25th, the first United States Congress adopted 12 amendments to the Constitution and sent them to the states for ratification. 10 of those amendments became the Bill of Rights.
That was today.
That was today. So
Great.
you were looking for something for today, so that was my something for today.
Right on.
That was on www.timelines.ws.
So I'm going to throw something out there that has nothing to do with anything. But today I bought one of these things. I think it's JUUL, like a nicotine cigarette thingy. Yeah. And anyway, I'm interested in any feedback people have on them. I like it so far, but wondering if it's worth investing. There's other gadgets and gizmos for it. Interested in if anybody out there has played with these things. They're
Is that like a
basically
vape thing?
it's vape, but it's more of a stop smoking type of cigarette replacement than any of
good.
the like juicy blah 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 types. And so far, I'm liking it mainly because it's very tiny. It's about there's no way to describe it. Oh, you know what it's like? You know, remember juicy fruit gum or something like that? Big red, like old fashioned sticks of gum. It's only like 2 sticks of gum thick. It's like totally thin and kind of square. So I like.
Does it use the cartridges?
Yeah, it uses little disposable cartridges, and
Okay.
the sales pitch is that it costs you $20 and it lasts for quite a while, and then the cartridges, cost less than cigarettes. And what I like about it is that it's like Hosh has something similar. I don't think he has the same brand, but it's so lightweight you can just carry it around instead of this big contraption. Like those big kids that are smoking clouds of shit. It's just some little thing, and it's really clean. But anyway, it hits just like a cigarette. You really get like a little cigarette type of hit as opposed to a big cloud of fruity smoke. So anyway, I'm just curious if it's going to work for the long term for people, and any feedback.
Well, anything that helps you stop smoking cigarettes is good. You should switch to cigars.
Actually, Clover gave me a pipe not too long before I headed out on the trip, and then just before the trip, he made sure I had these 2 big giant bags of, one was sherry and one called Hobbit Weed. I think we talked about it, which is a blend he made up that is no longer blended or something. And wow, it tastes really good. So yeah, I've been using that like when cigarettes in Chicago are freaking like, I don't remember, $12 or $18 a pack.
Yeah, I smoked a pipe for years. I love smoking pipes. And
yeah, I really like it in
one
the
of my
car
favorites.
for like long drive, long haul. I really don't like smoking a cigarette because I'm not talking with anybody. I'm not on a break or something. A cigarette is kind of the right length for a break or whatever, at work or something. Or like a lunch break at the convention, But in a car, I don't necessarily want to smoke a whole cigarette. And what are you going to put out a cigarette halfway through? That's a pain in the ass and it stinks. So with the pipe or whatever, you can puff it a couple of times, just set it there, it goes out, puff it a little bit more, throw some, I don't know if I'm doing it right, throw a little bit more tobacco in there and puff on it. And yeah, pretty neat. I don't think the dog cares one way or the other. So anyway, I'm hoping, I'm not trying to get rid of smoking cigarettes, but I am sick of paying for cigarettes. So I'm curious to see, like I say, if this thing will work.
Yeah, I think pipe smoking is not bad. The only thing you got to watch out for is the lip cancer. That's the only bad thing. And cigars the same way.
Well, otherwise, stay tuned for more adventures. I'm probably only at the third of the way into it now, but I don't have any more appointments other than gun rights policy. I mean, the Arizona Citizens Defense League annual meeting. Every states' right group, states gun owners' rights group will have an annual meeting typically where they get together. Everybody can meet up and say hey, and ours has like a raffle and stuff to raise some money, and then a nice dinner with vegan options because they're awesome. And that's about the only thing I have left that's like an actual scheduled thing. So I'll be moseying around, checking out gun shops. I appreciate people have been throwing in some suggestions for shops. I would appreciate it if you'd head over to gunshowloopholetour.com, the website I put up for the tour itself. On the main page there, and then in the menu, there's a link to suggest a location, and that just gives me one centralized place to look when I'm driving into a new state or a new city or something. Makes it a lot easier if they were all in one spot. I realize they're not going to all be there, but anybody who wants to put that a little bit of extra effort, I'd still try to scroll through, the comments on a post here and there on Instagram. But when you put them into like comments like gun channels or in the YouTube side, those are going to, disappear for the most part, or else be real difficult to go back and find them, even if I remember where they were. It might take a while to search through them. Definitely on a phone, it's difficult. So anyway, appreciate the people that are suggesting places. I found a couple of places just kind of randomly, but Definitely value the direction people give me to this, the coolest shops out there. Like somebody just mentioned one that had their 75th anniversary. That's got to be cool for a shop to be 75 years old. That's pretty neat. So lots more adventures coming up, and lots more scolding and bitching because I went to this gun rights ecology conference, and I'm not convinced that we're going to change the world just yet. So we're going to change that so that we can change the world in 2019. And we're going to fucking get ready for that. So get ready to be bored as shit or flee, because I don't want you around if you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and get fucking sweaty, because we're about to put in some real work so that we're not spinning our wheels anymore, or at least
Well,
not.
you got your perfect time coming up here, because November is election year. Let's get them midterms going, baby.
You know it, and I'm kind of frustrated that we're not already, we don't have calls to action, in 6 different things, so that everybody out there who's efforting can pull in the same direction. It might be too late for that, it might not. We're going to put some feelers out there and find out. And I don't know, whatever. Anybody got a quote?
I got a quote.
Right on.
So, in the spirit of today's main topic, here is a quote from a regular citizen, Donald L. Klein. Keeping and bearing arms is not only a fundamental right, it is a fundamental duty upon which all liberty and sovereignty is based. And that's our quote from Donald Klein.
Right on. Thanks, Cody, for jumping in. It was good to have you for the first time. Woods, Gary, and Cycle, thanks for jumping in. I cannot do the show by myself. And people that are watching on gun channels, I value your jumping in on the place that a whole bunch of people pay to exist. All you people on YouTube, I acknowledge you exist.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thanks for watching gunwebsites.com.